Fertility ain't fair.
That's right.
So let's talk about it. Real, raw, unfiltered, with me, your friend in fertility. Yes, welcome back to another episode of Fertility Ain't Fair. I am your host, Britt, and if you are new, welcome to our space, our community. You are welcome. Thank you for joining us. And if you are returning, well, you already know what happens here, so welcome back. Come on in, have a seat, get your notepads ready. Hopefully it's your Fertility Ain't Fair notebook, and if not, go ahead and check it out on Amazon. Yes, shameless plug again. So today we are talking about endometriosis, which is a chronic illness that both myself and our guest, Miss Ashlei Stevens, unfortunately suffer with. But we are by no means alone in this journey and in this struggle. And so March being Endo Awareness Month, wanted to bring light to this very painful and undiagnosed or misdiagnosed or underdiagnosed illness and disease, and talking to her about her journey, her struggles, and the many years she has had to deal with and is still dealing with endometriosis. So Miss Ashlei Stevens, though, she is an amazing event MC, radio personality, co-host, TV host, web series host. She uses her voice to inform, inspire, and empower. She has 15 years in the media experience, spanning from government to nonprofits to TV to radio, you name it, she's done it. And she's also a very proud board member of Endo Black Incorporated. We will get into who they are and what they do very soon. But today is all about endo and how to, note symptoms. What are the symptoms? What is it? And how to ask certain questions if you're not being heard, if you have questions about it, if you feel like something's just not right, and maybe this could be something to bring up in your next doctor's appointment. So let's go ahead and get on into it on this episode of Fertility Ain't Fair. Ashlei, welcome to Fertility Ain't Fair. How are you?
I am great, Brittany. I'm doing well. It's listen, each week that we're alive in this pandemic, there's nothing we can say but that we're doing well. So yes, I'm glad to be here with you. How are you?
I will also say I'm doing well, and I'm just glad to have you here today to go over a couple things and really get into our chat about endometriosis, one of our arch nemesis.
Yes.
That we share, and a lot of women, unfortunately, we're all in the club, the Endo Club, together. But before we jump into that conversation, I definitely want to start off how I start every show, by asking you, how do you define yourself? What are the words or phrases that describe who Ashlei is?
First is definitely resilient. And dealing with endo alone, we'll get into that. That I think has proven in so many ways my resilience and flexibility. Resilient. I'm definitely energetic. I'm a go-getter. I kind of go for the things that I want. I'd like to say exuberant too. I try to do things as best I can with a positive attitude and a positive spirit, because I realize the opportunities that I have and that I'm blessed with are things that maybe someone else would love to have the opportunity to be able to try, and I don't take for granted the opportunities that I have. So I'd say exuberant, and most of all, and something that I'm working on daily, is gratitude. So grateful, I would hope, also describes me, someone who is grateful for all that they have and an expectation of all that is to come.
I love it. So what's one thing today that or this week that you are grateful for?
I am grateful for the opportunity to be able to unplug. As a person who works in media, on a radio show, I host a couple web shows. Like, I'm always kind of dialed in and tuned into the digital world. But actually this week, I think it's been good to make a conscious effort and a conscious choice to take a break, because sometimes we need the mental break for me, sometimes as someone on a fertility journey, I need the emotional break.
Mm-hmm.
And taking that break from the digital world can provide those things for me to just truly unplug and say, it's okay to not be tapped into everything else that's going on in the world and just truly find some other things to focus on in those moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we were talking before we hopped onto the show about a break in terms of social media breaks. And so, you were mentioning that, I just needed to get off Instagram specifically. Sometimes Facebook, is okay and I can get past that. But for what it meant for you, it was I need to get off Instagram for, a period of time because it's just been a lot.
Exactly right, Brittany. And yes, as we were chatting and definitely don't mind sharing. I mean, I think again, breaks are healthy. I think we have to know our limits and know what we can and cannot handle.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, someone who, when I received news, I guess 2 summers ago, after my first surgery for endometriosis, that conceiving children might not be likely for me, according to the doctors, because again, that's not God's final say.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do have moments where I struggle with maternity shoots and pregnancy announcements and
Mm-hmm.
birth photos and cute outfits and I it's such a mixed bag, a catch 22 rather, because I again as someone who describes myself as grateful, I by all means don't want it to seem as though I'm not happy for other people because I honestly am. I'm
Right.
so happy to see other people when they receive their blessings.
Mm-hmm.
The duality of it is being 39, just, for almost, for a few weeks now,
Mm-hmm.
it's the Lord, when is it going to happen for me? I'm
Yeah.
not on the young end of things, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
I know what I can and can't handle. And sometimes I need those breaks because I don't need Instagram in particular because it's image driven.
Mm-hmm.
The images are just more stark. And when it's in your face and you're not in a good emotional space, it's okay to step back and say, you know what? Dial off, delete the app, take the break, do what you need to do to protect your peace. And so that's what I'm doing. And not sure how long it'll last, but for now it's all already been, it's already been almost a week and I feel good about that. That I don't even
Yeah.
really miss picking up the phone to go to it. So,
Right. Yeah, and I
mhm.
thank you for being open to sharing that. I think, like you said, it is a duality that we are happy for those who we care about and who we follow and who, friends, family, or other, and we are excited. But like you said, we have to also not feel guilty for protecting our own mental space, our own
Mhm.
peace, and our own journey. And
Right.
I think that's where sometimes people in our community can feel bad, right? You feel guilty, like, I shouldn't have to delete the app. I should be okay with it. No, you don't have to be. You don't have to
Mhm.
be okay with seeing those images. You don't have to be okay with, how it makes you feel. I think, we need to just make better efforts for our own space and our own peace to do what's best for us and not feel guilty for doing that. So thank you for sharing your break. And so we wish you all the best and continuing to get off IG for a little while.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate you understanding as well because not everyone does.
Hmm.
And some people think that maybe you're being bitter or maybe you're
Hmm.
being too emotional because you can't handle, or maybe you're jealous because you
Hmm.
can't handle other people's good news. And I don't think that's it.
Hmm.
I'm not a spiteful, I'm not a jealous, I'm not a bitter or resentful person. This just stems from, hearing news later in your maternity years that you're still
Hmm.
trying to deal with. And as a single woman, to me, it's compounded as
Yeah.
well because you feel a little bit like your options are, I won't say cut in half, but I'd say maybe what might take twice as long to reach because you're by yourself.
Yeah.
So, mhm,
Yeah, it's just really complex. Like you said, adding on to, maternal age and adding on to, being single and just, you add to that journey. And it's super complex, but yes, totally understand. So let's dive into endo. So I'm gonna do a quick definition per Google for all of those who may be listening to, get a baseline, right, for us all to start on the same page because you may or may not
know what it is, or you may have heard of it, and you may not, be dealing with it. Maybe someone you know is, etc. So we're defining endometriosis as an often painful disorder in which tissue, similar to the tissue that normally lines the inside of a uterus called the endometrium, it grows outside of the uterus. So it can affect your ovaries, fallopian tubes, the tissue lining your pelvis, etc. And so, what usually triggers the pain that we feel, either for the first time or monthly or whatever it is your monthly menstrual cycle. So every cycle, the tissue thickens, it breaks down, it bleeds. And so there's no way for that tissue to exit your body. So it becomes trapped. So therefore, it just creates essentially scar tissue and adhesions in places where it shouldn't be. So
Mm-hmm.
that's just a baseline, for all of us to be on the same page. And so, like I said, I had no idea, this was even part of my life until I had a surgery. And so some of the common symptoms, and we'll get into what, you discovered with yours. One of the most common ones is pelvic pain, often associated with menstrual periods, but not always. You can have, pain in your pelvic area, outside of just your monthly menstrual period. So pain during intercourse, sometimes pain during or after sex can be common, pain with bowel movements or urination, excessive bleeding, bleeding in between your periods, or heavy menstrual bleeding during your periods. Of course, infertility is one of the common side effects and symptoms of endometriosis, and how women find out about it a lot of times because they're trying to figure out what's going on, and this may come up in that conversation. And then other things like fatigue, diarrhea, constipation, bloating, and nausea, etc. And that can all be heightened during your menstrual period.
Mm-hmm.
So those
Mm-hmm.
are all just really common symptoms. So if you're out there thinking like, what's going on, am I overthinking? Am I downplaying my pain? No, you're probably not, right? For you to get answers, to get help. So in terms of your journey, Ashley, when did you find out, or when were you diagnosed with endometriosis, and what symptoms did you have, I guess, prior to even knowing you may have had it?
Sure. And you did a great job of really explaining what it is, because you're right. I still encounter many people, many adults who are not familiar with it, haven't heard of
Mm-hmm.
it, don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And for many people think that it's just a very bad period, a very painful period, but it really
Right.
can be a full body disease, and it can
Mm-hmm.
affect women in different parts of their bodies. So I received an official diagnosis in the summer of 2019, right before I turned 37, which is considered pretty late in life, to be honest with
Mm-hmm.
you, because
Mm-hmm.
I'd had issues since my period started,
Mm-hmm.
which was right before I turned 12. And
Yeah.
so for 27 years, I was in debilitating pain
Mm.
every single month. Cramps that would keep me literally on the floor,
Yeah.
nausea, vomiting. We tried different medicines. We tried prescription medicines. Nothing would stay down. I would pass out from pain.
Mm.
Um, you name it. Terrible,
Yeah.
terrible migraines
Mm-hmm.
that would keep coming back. Heavy bloating.
Mm-hmm.
That was all kind of through my preteen and teen years. I was able to get myself on birth control just before I started college, and that helped
Yeah.
to kind of mitigate some of the symptoms to where I wasn't missing work or school
Mm-hmm.
for a couple of days in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one day a month I would miss, and otherwise I could be still, a student athlete and work at the newspaper and intern and do journalism and do college activities
Mm-hmm.
without too much interruption. But again, I didn't know. I never knew. I had not heard the word endometriosis until I was in my late 20s living in New York.
Yeah.
And I tried different types of birth control by that time, and over time they would just wear off and just stop working. The pain would
Mm-hmm.
be back. And I had a male doctor at that time who said, well, it's very possible you have endometriosis, but the only way to find out and confirm is by surgery. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I had moved to New York at the time. I packed up, I quit my state government job in South Carolina, packed up, moved to New York, with no job and dreams of hosting a talk show. And I did just that. But I
Mm-hmm.
was kind of, I had little jobs here and there until I landed something full time. So I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember the full reason as to why he did not perform the surgery. I don't remember at the time if it was an insurance matter,
Mm-hmm.
or what I think may have been more so the case. He and other gynecologists, even around that time, said, well, you're in your late 20s, you'll be married soon, you'll have children. The
Mm.
pain goes away after you have babies.
Oh,
So
wow.
I've been hearing this baby being the remedy since I was at least 16 years old. From
Wow.
doctors, from other women who had bad periods. Well, yeah, after the baby,
Mm.
the pain just went away. The pain really improved after the baby. So I've been holding out hope for this miracle babies, quote
Mm.
unquote, to take my pain away since then. And then there's also this preconceived notion that, well, Southern women get married younger and, oh, you're almost 30. There's no reason to think that you wouldn't be married and have a child. Of
Mm.
course, we all wanted to think that. And here I
Right.
am a year from 40 and it's never happened.
Right.
I don't think that it won't, but it hasn't yet.
Mm-hmm.
So the diagnosis came late in life, 27 years after I'd been experiencing debilitating pain, tried different things, finally had a surgeon who took my pain seriously enough to do a laparoscopic surgery. That's how
Mm-hmm.
they diagnose. And I have what's considered advanced stage or end stage,
Mm-hmm.
endometriosis stage 4,
Mm-hmm.
which is, as you mentioned, adhesions that form inside your body. They had fused many of my internal organs together,
Mm.
mostly in my digestive and reproductive tract. So I've been having digestive issues for the past decade or more. I've had several gastrointestinal surgeries because we never knew that it was endo that was
Wow.
the real culprit.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a bit of relief in knowing I had an official diagnosis in the summer of 19. And there was also a grand emotional breakdown
Yeah.
because not ever having been told that conception might not be an option for me was legitimately earth shattering.
Yeah.
To be completely honest with you,
Mm-hmm.
it
Mm-hmm.
broke me down in more ways than I ever even wanted to admit. As
Mm-hmm.
someone who considers, again, the first word I mentioned that I describe myself as resilient,
Mm-hmm.
someone who usually bounces back from things with a positive attitude, I didn't handle it well. And the reality is, with advanced as my endo is, even after surgery, it's come back. And so I had yet another surgery in early 2020. I'm sorry, early 2021. So not even a year and a half later, and that has helped with some of the
Mm-hmm.
pain.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a greater reality. Again, it's stage 4. I mean, I have read there are women in other groups who have had multiple surgeries just to mitigate the pain.
Yep.
Some who try different herbal remedies, CBD
Mm-hmm.
products, different things. I mean, I've tried different things, and honestly, nothing really, really helped except the surgery because I was so badly fused
Yeah.
inside. So that is my journey from diagnosis to today. Um,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, and
Wow.
it's been an interesting one. Mm-hmm.
And it, yeah, I was trying to go where to start from there. I think
Yeah.
one thing that you said that really stood out was the fact that, people are not really coming with a solution outside for so long than a baby. And,
That's it.
not to dig deeper. And I every time I talk to someone about endo, I have to know the journey and how they got to their diagnosis, because more and more, and I feel like you may have heard a lot of the same things. It's more and more about, just not being either taken seriously or not heard, or, just no one ever bringing it up. And I'm like, why are doctors not bringing it up more? And maybe it's because a surgery has to be involved to, get the concrete answer, but it still should be an option. It's
Mm-hmm.
baffling to me, I think, that, people in the healthcare profession, no matter how wonderful they are, they're not bringing it up as a possible diagnosis more when we're coming to them and saying, my period's not normal, my symptoms aren't normal. I've even, kind of blamed myself sometimes. I say, you know what, maybe I should have been more, aggressive about talking about how bad things are, and maybe I did mitigate them because I've been learning how to cope. So by the time I talked to the doctor, maybe I did kind of brush it off as if, you know what I mean. But then I'm like, well,
Mm-hmm.
yes, but no. No one in my healthcare life, up until I was 30, even brought it up, even as a mention. It's just really baffling to me. And it makes me sad and upset, that I hear more and more women, especially women of color, talking about having to deal with something that they just don't know what it is. Because that's, of course, one of the most frustrating things, in the world, is to just be battling something that you don't know what it is. And that's what this disease, it is a disease, is what it is. And it's funny because with me, I too, always had very painful periods. And so, like, I said it before, I just thought I was an unlucky girl. Like, like some people, they told us they would be uncomfortable. Maybe I'm just having worse pain than other people. And I don't think I really thought twice about it for so long. It was just like, yeah, maybe I did miss, cheer practice today. Maybe I couldn't go to dance today, or I couldn't do swim today. And I just thought it was normal. And then it got to the point where in adult life, I really was like, I don't think I can work today. And that's not normal. that shouldn't be happening. You know what I mean? And the first person to ever say to me, hey, do you think you might have this, was my husband. Like, from watching all those endometriosis ads on TV. He was the first one that said to me, do you think you might have that? And I was like, I don't know. I feel like if I would have, someone would have told me by now. That's what I said back. And I kind of was like, I don't know. And it wasn't until I had my surgery, to remove my fallopian tube that was blocked, that was endo ridden, that I didn't know, that they were like, oh yeah, we found endo there. We tried to take some of it away from that side. We did what we could, but there's still more there, and as you mentioned, even with surgery, it's a good chance of it coming back. But to have to go through all these hoops, right, to get to a diagnosis is just baffling to me. My God.
It is. And something that you mentioned, I think the fact that, well, one, and I would encourage women and anyone who's listening, is to not blame yourself and to be your own advocate. I think sometimes we do look back and wonder, well, what else could I have done? And maybe I didn't fight as hard as I could have. And I think we did the best we could with what we knew how at the time, right? I think we could. I think there's even been research to show that Black women's pain is just not believed at the rate of non-Black women. And it usually takes on average 7 to 10 years longer for a Black woman to receive an endometriosis diagnosis than a white woman. Because again, our significant pain is not believed, or it's believed that we can handle such a great amount of pain that, oh, well, she can handle it. Surely it's nothing more serious. So I've seen numerous doctors from the time I was 12 years old. And God bless my mom. She did everything she could and knew how within her power. I mean, she really did. And, we did with what we knew at the time. And that word was never mentioned. Endometriosis, rather, was never mentioned until I was a young adult.
Yeah.
Right. So, And from there, it's taken, even from before then, it still continued to take a lot of self-advocacy to ask questions, to be my own doctor. At times I've received, referrals and advice to go into temporary menopause with certain medications, to have, quote unquote, the final surgery. I don't even like to say the word. It starts with the letter H because I don't receive it over my life. And I don't want that as a part of my story. So I don't really ascribe or subscribe to it.
Yeah.
But doctors will tell you a lot of stuff. They will. But I would say also to anyone listening, to hopefully this podcast alone is a great resource that you can, learn information from. Endo Black, I'm proud to be a board member of, Black Women with Endometriosis Incorporated. And we are definitely a resource hub for Black women and women of color to help them advocate for themselves. But yeah, maybe this can be a starting point for someone listening to say, hey, maybe I need to dig a little deeper and really pray to be led to the right place and the right person.
Right.
Because there are a lot of doctors who will, they'll give you the surgery and they still won't do what needs to be done because they're not necessarily specialists. There is a difference. There are gynecologists and there are endo specialists who are more rare. And it is worth your time and your money and your investment to really research and find a skilled endo specialist to make sure that if they're going in, they know exactly what they're doing to help clear the endo out.
Yeah, that's good. That's a super good
Mm-hmm.
point and a good resource. And we'll definitely make sure to plug Endo Black at the end of this. And of course, plug you as well to connect. You've already mentioned some of the things that you've done to cope with your pain over all of these years. Tell me this, you've had two surgeries at this point. Have you ever got medicated for endometriosis specifically? Like, I know there's a couple things that I was, or one in particular, I won't say the name of the medicine, but that I was offered, I should say, by my OBG just recently, and I chose against it at the moment. But have you taken on any, medication for endo, during your journey with it?
I've been recommended two things to take. And like you
Mhm.
mentioned, like you said, I don't have to necessarily say the names, but one I believe is essentially cancer medication.
Mhm. Mhm.
That again is supposed to stop your menstruation,
Mhm.
right? It's supposed to put you into temporary menopause. The
Yes.
hope is
Mhm.
that one, it stops your pain month to month.
Mhm.
Two, it stops you from releasing eggs so that that way, because when with endometriosis, it's very possible you may have a lower egg reserve. So they're
Mhm.
saying they try to sell it as, hey, maybe this is more beneficial. You're going to preserve the eggs that you do have. You won't be in the monthly pain, but you are actually going on into menopause with the nightmares, the hot flashes, the night sweats,
Mhm.
a lot of mood swings. I've read from I did a lot of research when they first offered this particular medication to me, and
Mhm.
I would hear other women in other groups talk about it. And they said if you're already someone who is dealing with perhaps depression, don't get on this
Yes.
because suicidal ideations are some of the side effects, right? And a lot of women who are just finding out they have a serious condition like endometriosis, or they may be having fertility challenges, that can do a number on your mental health alone. And I
Yep.
didn't want to add a new medicine to that mix.
Mhm.
So I was first prescribed one thing, and then it wasn't available, I guess, because during the pandemic had just begun.
Mm.
And for whatever reason, I guess they actually needed it for cancer patients. Like it was just a short supply. So they recommended something else. It was going to be like $800 a month. Who's
Oh,
paying for that? Like I
what?
don't have it. Yes, it
No.
was going to be something absurd and ridiculous.
Wow.
And it was still, again, going to put me in temporary menopause,
Yeah.
which I absolutely refuse because these medications over time can cause your bones to be more dense. From
Yes.
everything that I've read,
Yes.
and not only that, from other women, I've gotten on the phone with other women and
Yes.
talked to them and said, tell me your experience. How long were you on it? Did it impact you? There are some women that say, it's been great. I've been able to have my life back because I'm not in pain.
Mhm.
Other women that have been on this stuff on and off for months and for years literally are in their 30s and 40s with frail bones and frail
Yeah.
teeth because the medication has done a number. And it's not for me. It's not
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
So with that, I have continued to try to find ways to manage the pain. Again, the surgery was a big help again
Mhm.
in early 2021. And I have definitely tried acupuncture.
Yeah, me
I
too.
have tried
Yep.
herbal. I've tried herbs
Yep.
that seemed to help for a while until again,
Mhm.
my condition was just so advanced that the herbs alone just weren't going to do it because everything internally was
Yeah.
in bad shape, so to speak. So yeah, acupuncture, herbs. I don't drink caffeine.
Mhm.
So I do a lot of decaf green tea.
Mhm.
Ginger tea is good for digestive. I still, I've had digestive issues with this disorder.
Mhm.
So I'll say just in terms of things that have helped, cutting out meat, um, definitely cutting back on dairy, anything that can be inflammatory. I
Yeah.
don't really keep or eat a lot of bread. I don't keep bread in the house.
Mhm.
I don't keep buy sugar in the packets, sugar in the, whatever sugar you
Yeah.
granulated sugar to put in
Mhm.
coffee.
Mhm.
I haven't bought a pack of sugar in many, many years. Because again, anything white, anything starchy, that can all be inflammatory,
Mhm.
which is not good for someone with an illness like endometriosis. So watching what you eat, I think, is part of the battle in addition to finding any type of herbal supplement.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. I love it. Yeah, I too have done acupuncture. As you mentioned, certain teas and herbal remedies. Ginger and turmeric definitely help with
Mm-hmm.
inflammation. And raspberry leaf and dandelion root. Those are all things that can help with a number of things, but definitely things that are anti-inflammatory. Can also help with fibroids as well if you're dealing with those on top of this, like I am as well. Um, And so I'm glad that you were honest about, the medication, because we're talking about the same one. We had the same one in mind. And I was looking at all kinds of different reviews and, different groups of women, asking them about, had they taken it, what their thoughts were, etc. And the one thing that you mentioned was my red flag, my internal red flag, I would say, was the mental toll. The bone density also caught my eye very heavily, but when I continuously saw the depression and anxiety being mentioned as being very heavily influenced by this drug, I was like, there is no way I can take on, as you mentioned, any additional a boost in anxiety and depression. That's I
Right.
can't, it's like I'd rather at this point be in pain or look to do another surgery before I intentionally, amp up on anxiety and depression. I just can't. I can't. So that for me
I
was
agree
the
with you.
yeah, that
Mm-hmm.
was the internal, like, the internal alarm going off, like, girl, it's not for you. Like, it's not for you. But as you mentioned, there are women who, of course, have been helped with this. So, once again, we're not here to give medical advice. We are here to say, hey, this is what we have tried, what we've experienced, and of course, advocate and find your own path in this disease and any other disease that you have. But yeah, I appreciate your honesty on that, because I felt the same way, actually.
Oh, I was going to say, I think some women too, they're so desperate for relief
Yeah.
that they do go with the first thing the doctor suggests.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally, this disease can be crippling.
Mm-hmm.
I consider myself blessed that it impacts my digestive and reproductive areas. There
Right.
are women who have endometriosis in their lungs.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, the scar tissue and
Mm-hmm.
adhesions are in their lungs. They have lung collapses. They have to have surgery every few months just to be able to regularly breathe. Right. There are other women that I know that they've had so many surgeries that have ended up botched. They impact their bladder, just their
Mm-hmm.
ability to be able to go to the bathroom every day.
Mm.
Right. Like and so yeah, there's what's considered thoracic endo, which is in the chest. Very, very rare occasions they have found that endo has floated to women's brains. Like it is no one, you would never have known this if you weren't
No.
someone who had the
Yeah.
illness, right?
Yeah.
So I say that many women really are so desperate for relief that they do try medications. And I'm certainly not one to knock someone for their decision to try
Mm-hmm.
what they want to try
Mm-hmm.
that might work for them. I just know for me, and at this age and desiring a family, I'm just gonna stick it out, you know,
Yeah.
and see what God has for me, because I don't want to limit my body with the medications that could do, in my view, more harm than good at this point.
Yep. I totally agree. I totally agree. So I know you mentioned earlier, being 39, a beautiful 39. Let's be very clear.
Oh, thank you, Brittany.
Okay. A beautiful 39, a young 39 by all other standards outside of us going to the fertility clinic. um,
Right.
it's it's by no means the end of the road, but I know that in our world, they look at you funny after 35, which is just a whole different conversation. So what are your current plans? Freezing eggs, freezing embryos, kind of where are you in terms of what you would like to see next for your family plans?
Sure. Well, I have gone forward to freeze eggs. I did that right when the pandemic started. It actually was pushed back a little bit because COVID was up in the air. No one really
Mm,
knew at the time how it was spreading and how you catch it. So it got pushed back a bit, but I was thankfully still able to do it. And I have just a couple of eggs frozen. I'm grateful for that.
mm-hmm.
But that's just one very expensive step. The next
Yes.
very expensive step is the actual fertilization of the egg, which
Mm-hmm.
means, you need donor sperm or a partner. And, that's what I currently don't have. And so I admit to you, Brittany, that's still a work in progress.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mix of, do I have an action plan plus, what might God, how might He show Himself strong and show up in my life, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
perhaps there's still time for a partner.
Mm-hmm.
I do have, you know, girlfriends and colleagues that have ventured forward as single women on their own because motherhood is important to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so proud of them for being that courageous to go forward and do it.
Mm-hmm.
It is something I definitely would consider. Um, but the biggest thing for me now is financial goals at this point. I've got
Yeah.
to save up because IVF is not covered by everyone's insurance plan.
Right.
And again, as a single person trying to do this by yourself, you really have to decide, okay, what's next? They've told me that IVF may be my only route to motherhood. So, and for those who are listening and may not be familiar, that's where everything happens externally. The egg and the sperm are fertilized externally. They create an embryo in a lab and then implant that into my uterus. Just because my tubes and everything had all been fused together to my internal organs and everything was so badly blocked, they didn't see natural conception as an option. Again, doctor's words, not the word of God, right?
Right.
So I
Right.
want to be clear there because I don't think my story is over. So
Yep.
yes, I moved back to South Carolina, in fact, from DC in an effort to help save funds and save money for the next journey, if that is IVF. So that's what I'm considering. And also weighing, does that look like, reaching out to someone, an actual colleague or friend that might desire to father, or does it look like getting a donor? Or
Mm-hmm.
does it look like just seeing what the next few months hold to see if maybe I'll have a partner, in real life,
Yeah.
that could also father. So I admit to you, it's still a work in progress, Brittany.
Yeah.
It is.
And that's fine. And
Mm-hmm.
I wish you, as I have, I continue to, all the things that your heart desires. I pray for those things for you and pray that you have the discernment that you need to make the next steps for your journey, whatever that may be, and that you are confident and faith filled when it comes to whatever it looks like next, and being okay with not knowing what it is today. Because as you
Thank
mentioned,
you.
you don't know what God's going to bring into your life, and when that decision is made, for you, or when you decide. I pray that the miracle happens, because we are both looking for our miracles and praying on our miracles daily.
Yes.
So I pray it's going to happen. I pray that motherhood for the both of us and anyone else listening, if that's in your heart, I pray that it is going to happen, and we don't know when, and that's hard, but it's going to happen in one way or another. So
Amen.
I thank
Yeah.
you for coming and sharing your story. I thank you for connecting with me so openly. I was a stranger to you, and we were connected by another friend, and I'm just glad that he had the insight from both of us to know that it would be a beneficial connection. And so I definitely think of you as part of my fertility family. And so tell us, how can you be reached? What's your web and social? And please plug Endo Black as a resource as well.
Sure. So yes, I've been delighted to speak with you, Brittany, and I stand in agreement with you that it's going to happen for us. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to encourage people who are listening. I think sometimes especially when I was first diagnosed, I'll say that everyone thought the solve to try to make me and other women in my similar situation feel better was, oh, well, you can always adopt. And
Oh,
while I
goodness.
appreciate that, I
Yeah.
would ask people to be more mindful before you offer that to someone who's going through
Mm-hmm.
their own fertility journey,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not as easy as going to say that you're going to pick up a child from the agency. It really is not.
No.
It is expensive. It is
Yep.
time consuming, and trust me, it will be worth it. And it is absolutely something I would love to do. It's
Yes.
also one of those things, especially now being single, there's still a lot of steps you have to take. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not as simple as someone just thinking that could be your quick resolve and it's going to happen in 2 months
Mm-hmm.
or 3 months or
Mm-hmm.
even a year, because it really might not. So
Yep.
I would just ask people to be mindful when you do offer that to people, that adoption is a beautiful journey. And I'm so excited for friends and colleagues who have taken that route and been blessed with beautiful children and the gift of parenthood that route. And I look forward, like I said, if that may be one of the options for me, I look forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
But I can be reached on social media. My name is Ashlei. That's Ashlei. And on Instagram, it's Ashlei_Stevens, Stevens. And I definitely follow Fertility Ain't Fair on Instagram, so you can find me there. On Facebook, my website is ashlei.net, ASHLEI. So I'm on the radio. You can hear me in Aiken and Augusta, South Carolina, and Georgia, Florence, South Carolina. Check out my social media pages on how to hear me. You might see me occasionally on TV One on some true crime shows there and on Oxygen, discussing criminal cases. And Endo Black, I definitely would encourage folks to go support Endo Black. Whether that be, maybe there's some partnerships that you could team up with us, endoblack.org. Yes, you may be able to be a resource to us, but it's also an incredible resource. There's guides. Our founder, Lauren Cornegay, is an awesome young woman. She's also created like not a fertility journal, an endo journal that you can take with you to write down your symptoms anytime, just kind of through the week and through the month. And you can take that with you to your doctor's appointments. Lauren has been amazing. She has really given everything to elevate and expand and bring attention to Endo Black Incorporated. And I really just want to give her some shine and some love because she's awesome. And having a safe space with other Black women who are going through the same thing has literally been a godsend for my mental, emotional, and my physical health. Because through them is how I found my most recent surgeon, who I think did a beautiful job on just on my journey to healing and helping me feel better, right? And there's just been so many resources on how to just your holistic route to healing, right? So Endo Black, again, endoblack.org, ENDOBLACK, endoblack.org. And they also have a fantastic Instagram page that you can find Endo Black on Instagram as well. And lastly, Brittany, if it's okay, I just want to share one more nugget. Upon my diagnosis, people would invite me to different private Facebook groups and support groups for women who were on their own journey. And I found Endo Black to be the only space so far that I've wanted to stay committed to, because we really do get each other and it is a safe space and women can really share. Sometimes women just need to vent because they don't have anyone who understands, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes I'd be invited to different groups, you know, with the word infertility tied to it. So the last thing I want to share to anyone listening is, and people know, especially when I speak to teen girls, is you don't have to receive what someone calls you, right? So I don't consider myself infertile. I don't accept that word. I don't use that word. I don't acknowledge the word infertility. IN means incapable, and I don't think that's who my God is. And so fertility, which is why I love your platform, fertility ain't fair, right? It's the journey of fertility. We never said infertile because we're not incapable, because God isn't. So I just want to note that is, don't speak infertility over your life. You may have fertility issues. There may be fertility challenges, but because you're still speaking life and fertility, fertile ground means there's still fertile opportunities. So that would be my parting word.
Look, that was a word. And that's how we're gonna end, because the
doctor's gonna speak a lot of stuff, but I've learned if you don't speak life, then no one else is going to. Seriously.
That's it.
Don't do it.
Can't say
don't
anymore.
do it. Don't do it. This is a fertility journey. There is nothing incapable, impossible. There's nothing. No, that those words don't have a place here. So I appreciate you, Brittany, and all that you're doing with your podcast, and just to have just rally around other women and even other couples who are going through this. Our story isn't over, sister. It's really not. We're going to be back on this podcast one day with full praise reports.
Okay. Tired with these babies.
in arm, hollering and screaming in arm.
And we are going to be the next success stories for someone else in our shoes who is looking at the journey like, how?
Amen.
You know, so I look forward to that day. I look forward to staying in contact with you and connection with you. And I will be ecstatic when I hear or see on social media that mommyhood is, you know, part of your who you are.
Yes, so thank you, Ashlei, once again for hopping in and checking in with us over at Fertility and Fair. You are appreciated. Thank you for sharing your journey and your story thus far. I know there is still so much more to be written over your life and over what you have coming up, and we don't even know where it's going yet, but we know that there are good things coming and continuing to come for you in your journey. So My key takeaways from this episode: number one, we've said it before, but we'll say it again. Digital and social breaks are healthy. Know your limits. Know what season you're in. Know what platforms are most triggering. It's okay to take breaks. You can announce it, but you also don't have to. You can just drop off and come back when you're ready and when you're in a better space to accept whatever is happening on social media. Number one. Number two, be your own advocate and find yourself an endo specialist. If you have been diagnosed or you have questions or you have symptoms and you haven't been heard, find yourself someone who specializes in endometriosis, because it can be very different from your typical OBGYN or whatever else. So be your own advocate, get a specialist. Number three, Endo Black as a resource. So this is an amazing organization. Ashlei actually referred me to them when we first met. And now I am happy to say I am a current ambassador for Endo Black Incorporated. So check them out. They are on Instagram and all other platforms, but Endo_Black. Check them out. Amazing resource, dope merch, amazing events. They actually have an event coming up at the end of March, their annual conference. So if you want to hop in, check me out, see me in person, and you happen to be in the DC, Maryland, or Virginia area, come on through. And also, holla at Ashlei. She's available to talk. She's very open. She's very honest, as you've heard. So she is at Ashlei_Stevens. Check her out as well. And that's what we have today. That's what we got. So look, happy Endo Awareness Month. Get the help that you need. Talk until you get your answers. Ask until you feel heard. We are all here to support you. Hit me up, of course, on social media at Fertility Ain't Fair on Instagram and Facebook, or go to our website, fertilityaintfair.com. And until next time, I am your forever friend in fertility. Stay hopeful.